Welcome to the Unseen Files, where we reveal the stories the world tries to forget. Are you ready to uncover the truth? A foggy countryside stretched endlessly under the night sky, the distant road barely visible through the thick mist. A man in his mid-30s drove cautiously, his eyes scanning the road ahead, every shadow tugging at the edges of his mind. Suddenly, through the swirling fog, a Victorian house appeared, glowing faintly with an eerie, warm light. He squinted, feeling an uncanny familiarity, though he knew he had never been here before. The house seemed to breathe in the fog, its windows flickering like watching eyes. He stepped out of the car, gravel crunching under his shoes as the mist swirled around him, curling like fingers reaching toward the house. His hand trembled as it touched the old wooden door handle. Before he could knock, it creaked open on its own, revealing a warm, inviting glow that felt both comforting and sinister. Inside, polished wooden floors stretched before him, dust clinging to the corners, candles flickering softly. Shadows danced along the walls, moving in ways that seemed almost alive, and he hesitated at the threshold, sensing he was being watched. The hallway stretched endlessly, floorboards creaking under his careful steps as candlelight flickered across faded paintings. The door to his left revealed a small child's bedroom, toys scattered, posters peeling, sunlight faintly spilling through dusty curtains. He paused, memories tugging at his mind as he traced the worn edges of a wooden toy car with his fingers. The mirror on the wall reflected him as a small boy, staring back with wide, fearful eyes. Whispers seemed to echo from the mirror. "Do you remember?" He turned and walked down the hall, where portraits slowly morphed into his teenage self, eyes following every step. Soft, distant piano music drifted through the house, though he saw no instrument or player. Another door opened to a room he did not recognize, filled with antique furniture and strange, unfamiliar paintings. The candles on the walls flickered unnaturally, their flames bending toward shadows that seemed alive. He felt the house breathing around him, walls stretching and narrowing in impossible ways as if it was aware of his presence. Floorboards groaned beneath him, though he was careful to step lightly, and the echoes seemed to follow him endlessly. In a corner, a key glinted faintly in the candlelight, resting on a small wooden table as if waiting for him. He picked up the key, its metal cold, and noticed that the handwriting in an open journal seemed to describe his exact movements. Whispering voices grew louder, indistinct phrases calling out regrets he thought he had buried long ago. Shadows stretched violently along the walls, dancing independently of the flickering candlelight. The room seemed to shift subtly, walls taller, windows narrower, the floor slightly tilted as he took each step. He spun at the sound of footsteps, but the hallway behind him was empty, silent except for the faint creak of the old floorboards. Mirrors along the hallway reflected him differently than he looked, subtle distortions making him feel unsteady. A metallic creak echoed as a door handle slowly turned on its own, though no one was there. Candlelight bent toward him as if pulled by some unseen force, illuminating a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. He pushed the door open slowly, revealing a dimly lit library, towering shelves filled with dusty journals and books. Dust motes swirled in the candlelight as the shadows seemed to stretch toward him, almost breathing with life. He picked up a journal, its pages old but freshly written, describing events that mirrored his very steps. Whispers floated through the library, soft at first, growing urgent and almost intelligible, calling his name. He felt the temperature drop as if the air itself had grown heavier, pressing down on his chest. A portrait on the wall shifted subtly, the figure's eyes narrowing, following his movements across the room. He approached the shelves carefully, tracing the spines of old books, feeling an unsettling familiarity. A sudden creak echoed, and he realized the library seemed impossibly longer than it had moments before. Candle flames bent sharply toward a dark corner, revealing the vague outline of a figure that vanished instantly. The journal trembled in his hands, its pages flipping by themselves, revealing passages that described his childhood fears. He stepped back, startled, noticing mirrors lining the walls reflecting versions of himself at different ages. Shadows moved independently, detaching from their objects and creeping silently across the floor. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, forming broken sentences he almost understood. "You were expected." His heart pounded as the library seemed to stretch even further, impossibly tall, the ceiling disappearing into darkness. He turned a corner and discovered an old wardrobe, its door slightly open, inviting him closer. Inside, letters and photographs from decades ago lay scattered, each one depicting scenes that felt strangely familiar. A shadow passed behind him, reflected in a glass pane, but when he turned, the hallway remained empty. He picked up one letter, and the words on the page seemed to shift, describing the house and his own arrival. The hallway seemed to change shape with every step, walls narrowing, windows lengthening, defying reason. He froze at a sound behind him, the creak of floorboards echoing in a place that should have been silent. Mirrors reflected him inconsistently, some showing his face older, some younger, all with the same anxious expression. The key in his pocket felt unnaturally heavy, as though it carried the weight of the house's secrets. A soft metallic creak sounded, and a door slowly turned, though no one had touched it. Candlelight seemed drawn toward the hallway, illuminating a door slightly ajar, promising answers yet threatening danger. He approached the door cautiously, every instinct screaming that opening it would change everything. Dust swirled around him, forming vague shapes that seemed almost alive, like the house itself was watching. He hesitated at the threshold, the air thick with whispers and a cold presence he could not see. Every step inside felt like stepping further into the unknown, the house reshaping itself around him. He reached for another journal, its pages fluttering as if eager to tell the story, revealing secrets that had been buried for decades. The journal described a man arriving at the house, unaware that it had been waiting for him his entire life. His breath slowed as he realized the handwriting matched his own, down to every uneven stroke. A sudden knock echoed from somewhere deep within the house, slow and deliberate. He followed the sound, each step pulling him farther from the entrance he could no longer see. The hallway darkened, candles extinguishing one by one as he passed them. At the end of the hall stood a staircase spiraling upward into complete darkness. He placed his foot on the first step, and the wood groaned as if protesting his weight. With each step upward, faint whispers grew clearer, repeating his name in hushed tones. The air grew colder, and frost began forming along the wooden railing beside him. Halfway up, he noticed framed photographs lining the stairwell, each capturing moments from his life. Childhood birthdays, teenage failures, quiet moments he never remembered being photographed. One photograph showed him standing in this very staircase, staring back at himself. He touched the frame, and the image subtly shifted, the version of him inside beginning to smile. He recoiled as the smile widened unnaturally, eyes dark and hollow. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a single phrase, "You came back." At the top of the stairs, a single door waited, older than the rest, its surface scarred. The key in his pocket vibrated faintly, as if responding to the door's presence. He hesitated, memories flooding his mind, things he was certain had never happened. Slowly he inserted the key, the lock clicking open with unsettling ease. Inside was a bedroom frozen in time, untouched by dust or decay. The room felt wrong, too familiar, as though it belonged to him. On the bed lay clothing identical to what he wore as a child. A small desk sat in the corner, covered in drawings depicting the house. Every drawing showed the same ending, the house standing alone, waiting. He noticed a mirror above the desk, its surface unnaturally clear. His reflection stared back, younger now, eyes filled with fear and confusion. Reflection raised its hand before he did. A voice whispered from behind him, calm and familiar, saying, "You never left." He turned quickly, but the room was empty, the door gone. The walls closed in slightly, and the house seemed to sigh in satisfaction. The air in the room thickened, pressing against his chest as though the house was drawing closer. He searched for a window, but the walls were seamless, unbroken. The mirror cracked softly, thin fractures spreading like veins across its surface. From the reflection, the younger version of himself began to mouth silent words. He leaned closer and finally understood the message, "You promised." A sudden rush of memories flooded his mind, overwhelming and fragmented. He remembered being a child, standing before this house for the first time. He remembered entering willingly, curious, unaware of the cost. The house had shown him comfort, safety, and belonging when he had none. In exchange, it had asked for something small, something he hadn't understood then. A promise to return when the house began to forget itself. The room trembled as the memory settled, walls creaking in recognition. The mirror shattered completely, falling inward into darkness rather than outward. Behind the broken glass was another hallway, older and far more decayed. He stepped through, feeling the house rearrange itself around his decision. The whispers returned, no longer threatening, but grateful. The hallway smelled of dust and time, heavy with forgotten years. Doors lined the corridor, each labeled with dates from his life. One door bore today's date, its handle worn smooth. He placed his hand on it, sensing that this door marked the end. The house creaked softly, almost affectionately, urging him forward. When the door opened, he saw a familiar living room, warm and inviting. It was his childhood home exactly as he remembered it. A younger version of himself sat on the couch, staring into nothing. The child slowly turned his head and locked eyes with him. The child smiled faintly and said, "You came back like you said." The house seemed to exhale deeply, relieved, almost content. He understood then what the house truly wanted from him. It did not want his fear, or his memories, or his soul. It wanted him to stay, so it would never be alone again. He stood frozen, heart pounding, realizing the house had been waiting for this very moment. The child on the couch gestured, every instinct screamed to leave, but the house seemed to pulse with quiet desperation. Candlelight flickered gently, shadows softening. He stepped forward, hesitated, then lowered enough to sit on the couch beside the child. The air grew warmer, filled with the scent of wood and old paper. comforting yet strange. He realized he could feel the house's heartbeat, slow and steady before it, which holding a lifetime of secrets in one glance. A soft sigh echoed through the room, like the house exhaling for the first time in centuries. Every hidden corner of the house came rushing back. He understood that the house was alive, not in stone or wood, but in memory and promise. Shadows no longer danced menacingly. The journals lay open on the desk, pages fluttering in a breeze that had no source. He glanced at one page, seeing the story of himself written before it even happened. He realized that the house did not trap him, it remembered him, preserved him. The child stood, fading slowly, leaving only the warmth of presence and understanding behind. The walls stretched and shifted gently, revealing a familiar exit at the end of the corridor. He stepped toward the door, turning back once to see the house glow softly in farewell. Every shadow, every whisper, every photograph seemed to smile, a quiet thank you in stillness. He opened the front door and stepped out into the foggy night, the house behind him silent yet alive. The mist hugged the road, curling around him like a protective hand, guiding him forward. The distant lights of the countryside flickered, welcoming him back to the world he had left. He glanced back one last time, seeing the house standing proudly, waiting for the next story. He whispered softly to himself, "I will return," feeling the weight of the promise settle. The house remained behind, silent but patient, holding every memory, every secret, every step of his life within its walls. He walked through the fog, feeling the house's memory lingering in every shadow. The whispers returned softly, reminding him of promises he had made long ago. Memories flooded his mind, childhood fears, forgotten rooms, and secret corners. He realized the house had not just remembered him. Every step felt heavier, carrying fragments of himself the house would always keep. The child's image, a silent reminder of the promise he had made. Shadows and whispers pulsed softly around him, alive but no longer threatening. He understood the house did not trap him. It preserved his memories and secrets. He whispered, "I will return," promising him the house stood the house forever. Patient, holding every secret it had collected. Presence was in every shadow, every creak of the floor, every lingering whisper. He realized the house had become a part of him, and he a part of it. Each step forward felt like leaving behind pieces of his soul the house now kept. The fog and night seemed alive, carrying the weight of memory and unspoken promises. The child's face faded, leaving only warmth and understanding in his heart. He approached the familiar exit, knowing the house had guided him back to the world. Turning once, he saw the glow of the windows, patient, eternal, and proud. He whispered to the night, "I will not forget," sealing his bond with the house forever. The fog swallowed him, carrying his promise, leaving the house calm, and step away felt like a thread tying him to the house's eternal presence. He understood some stories never end, they wait for the next visitor or whisper. Its memories held him, the past, the present, and the promise of a return. And so the unseen files of the house remained, waiting for the next story, the next secret, the next visitor. Time passed, but the memory of the house never faded from his thoughts. Ordinary places began to feel unfamiliar, as if reality had subtly shifted. At night, he dreamed of hallways that stretched forever and doors that whispered. In his dreams, the house called to him softly, patiently, without urgency. He woke each time with the same feeling that he was being watched. Mirrors lingered a moment too long on his reflection, subtly unsettling. Sometimes he swore his reflection blinked after he turned away. The promise echoed quietly in his mind, growing heavier with time. He understood the house would never chase him, it would wait. Years passed, yet the memory remained vivid, untouched by time. One evening, fog rolled in thicker than he had ever seen. The air felt familiar, heavy with the same silence as before. He followed a quiet instinct, turning down a road he didn't remember choosing. The fog parted slowly, revealing a familiar shape in the distance. Warm light glowed faintly through tall windows, steady and patient. The house stood exactly as it always had, unchanged and waiting. He stopped walking, heart pounding, knowing this moment was inevitable. The house did not move, but he felt its recognition instantly. Every memory returned at once, clear and undeniable. He stepped closer, gravel crunching beneath his feet once more. The front door opened slowly, without a sound, welcoming him back. Inside, the house felt calm, complete, as though something missing had returned. Shadows rested quietly, no longer shifting or watching. The air was warm, filled with familiarity rather than fear. He realized the house had not been empty without him, just incomplete. The walls creaked softly, acknowledging his presence like an old friend. He walked deeper inside, no longer afraid of what he would find. The mirrors reflected him clearly now, whole and unchanged. The whispers were gone, replaced by a deep, peaceful silence. He understood his role had never been to escape the house. His purpose was to remember it and allow it to remember him. The house settled around him, walls breathing slowly and evenly. Time felt meaningless here, stretched thin and unimportant. He felt no fear, only acceptance and quiet understanding. Outside, the fog thickened, hiding the house from the world once again. Inside, the lights glowed steadily, calm and alive. The house had its caretaker, its witness, its memory keeper. He took one last look toward the door, knowing he would not leave again. The door closed gently on its own, sealing the silence. Somewhere deep within the walls, the house sighed in relief. The unseen files were complete, their stories safely preserved. The house stood still, no longer searching, no longer waiting. To the outside world, it was just another abandoned place. But inside, every memory lived on, untouched by time. The house remembered everything it was given, and it would remember him forever. Some stories are never meant to end, only to be kept. Some places exist only to remember those who enters. This was one of those places. And this was one of the unseen files.